Hello everyone. Today I'll be talking about my injuries and how my life changed through these injuries. My first injury was an avulsion fracture of my ischial tuberosity. What this means is the hamstring muscle tendon tore away from my bone. Sometimes the tendon or ligament may even pull off a piece of bone along with it, which in my case it did, but it was very minute. This was my very first major injury, and at the time I was very young, 14 years old. At the time I was playing soccer at a very high level, and when the doctor told me about this injury, he told me I would be out for 2 months. My family believed that I would heal faster with the rehab and a strong recovery method. So I started my rehabilitation every day for the next 2 months. After a month, I started to feel a lot better. So I thought, why not go kick the soccer ball around? So that is exactly what I did. I went out with my mom to go practice some free kicks, and everything was going well. I took about 10 shots, and my hamstring felt fine. And then I told my mom I wanted to take one more free kick. So I did, and I felt a huge pop in my hip and an extreme amount of pain. I knew at that moment that I would be out again for at least another 2 months. I started crying, not because of the pain, but because I knew I was going to be on the sidelines again. My mom immediately took me to the hospital, and I could barely walk. I got my hip x-rayed, and they told me everything looked fine. But I knew they were wrong. I told my parents that they were wrong and that I could feel the pain. So they sent the x-ray to a specialist, and they responded back stating that I had another avulsion fracture. But this time it was in my hip. It was called an avulsion fracture of the iliac spine. Again, a major piece of bone was broken off my hip. We went to the specialist to get his opinion on what the next step should be. He told me that I would not need surgery and that I would just rehab my way back to full fitness. So again, I was out of soccer for 3 more months. Eventually time passed and my hip was getting better, but I was constantly feeling depressed and it started to take a toll on my body. My body started to ache everywhere, my left knee especially. It started hurting very bad. I told my doctor about the pain I was having in my knee. So we got an MRI on my knee, and he told me that I had torn my meniscus and it would require surgery to fix. So after 3 months of rehab and sitting on the sidelines, my doctor tells me I have a meniscus tear from doing absolutely nothing. So eventually I got the surgery. When I came out of the surgery, my parents told me that my meniscus was fine. They told me what actually happened was I had a condition called Plica Syndrome, which is a condition that occurs when the plica capsule of your knee becomes inflamed. My doctor told me that after the surgery, it would be better in about a month. So I rehabbed my knee for a month, and eventually my knee did get better. I went to my first soccer practice in about 9 months. I was feeling good, except I had this constant pain in my right hip every time I did a cutting movement. And the pain started to get worse after every practice, and sooner or later, I was out again. My doctor told me to get another MRI in my hip. So I did, and nothing was wrong. He said everything looked fine. When I came back from my checkup with the doctor, he did some mobility exercises, and he told me that he doesn't think there was anything wrong, but he wanted me to go see a hip specialist to see his opinion on it. So I went to this hip specialist. His name is Dr. Ellis. Again, he did some mobility work, and he said he wanted to get me checked for a labral tear. A hip labral tear is when the ring of cartilage called the labrum that follows the outside rim of the socket of your hip joint is torn, and it causes a popping, grating pain on the ball and socket of your hip joint. The labrum acts like a rubber seal to help hold the ball at the top of your thigh bone securely within your hip socket. To check for this injury, it is required to get a dye injection inside your hip joint that illuminates everything inside the joint. And then they'll put you in an MRI machine for about an hour long. So I did it. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And when the results came back, the doctor told me I had a major labral tear in my hip and that I would need to have a major surgery in order to fix the problem. The recovery for this surgery is a minimum of 6 months. When he told me this, I thought I would never play soccer again. These were the most important years of development in any kid's life for soccer. And there I was sitting on the sidelines. So I had a huge discussion with my parents about the surgery, and I told them without soccer in my life, I am nothing. All my life, soccer is what I wanted to do ever since I was 3. So we eventually came to the conclusion that I needed to get this surgery. I was very nervous before my surgery. I remember them giving me some crazy medicine that made me feel insanely happy. I was literally laughing for no reason. So I went into the surgery and I woke up 6 hours later, and they put 6 anchors inside my labrum, connecting it back to the bone. I woke up extremely sick and spent the night in the hospital. The next day, the nurse taught me how to walk with the crutches. I remember the nurse pushing me in a wheelchair back to the surgeon, and they put me on a stationary bike the day after the surgery. My parents invested in a stationary bike for me because I would need to do an hour of biking every day for the next 3 months. I rehabbed for the next couple of months, and it was extremely hard and painful. But again, just like my other injuries, I just pushed through it and eventually was able to run and play soccer again. Although my hip never healed 100% and it still hurts to this day, I was able to play for about a month until my other hip began to bother me. I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was a labral tear in my other hip. So I did the injection, MRI again, and yet again, it was another labral tear. But it was not as bad as the first one. I was now 16 years old, so it has been over 2 years since my first injury, and I still wasn't back to playing soccer yet. The one thing I didn't want to do again was have another surgery, so we tried many things before surgery, including cortisone shots in my hip. They helped for about 2 weeks, and then the pain would just come right back. So the only option was to have another surgery, because I was just injuring myself further and further without it. At this point, I told my club coach about this, and he was always good to me. He always told me that your starting spot is still there, but I told him I couldn't take it anymore, so I quit club soccer completely. I got the surgery and got only 2 more anchors in this hip, as it was way less severe. I then went through the same exact process for another 6 months, rehab and biking. Eventually, I healed again. I was now 17 years old, and some of my friends were already being accepted into colleges for soccer, while I was just starting to come back. I went back to my club team and played one last season with them. It wasn't the season I was hoping for, but I was happy. I was able to play the sport I loved again. Of course, I was not the same player I once was, but I still scored many goals in the season and had a great time being back with my team. It's easy to feel sorry for oneself when going through difficult times. However, this past fall, I lost a longtime soccer teammate of mine in a car accident. This allowed me to put some things in perspective, and now I'm able to reflect on my injuries with a new light. I've discovered that I've dealt with my injuries in a very similar way to how one grieves. There are 5 classic stages of grief, and I believe my journey has mirrored those stages. The first stage is the stage of denial. I didn't believe the doctors when I was 14 years old. I always thought I was fine and that I could just go out and play even though I was hurt. But I kept coming back too early, and I kept re-injuring myself. I was in a state of denial because of how much I loved soccer and how much I needed it in my life. The second stage I felt was anger. I was mad at everyone. I was mad at my family and God. And I was even angry at my friends because I was jealous of them being able to play, and I wasn't able to play with them. I didn't know how much I loved soccer until I lost it. I remember a time when I was watching my club team play, and I remember crying on the sidelines because of how bad I wanted to be out there. The third stage I felt was a stage of bargaining. When you lose something you love, you would do anything to get it back. I remember praying every hour of the day for the ability to heal and get my health back. I kept asking God for help every single day because He was the only one I could ask. I had no one else except Him and my family. The fourth stage I felt was depression. Going through the injuries were the lowest times of my life. It affected me in way more than just soccer. It affected my social life and my grades in school. And I missed the feeling of being with my team and traveling with them. I missed being with my friends when they were out having fun while I was in the hospital or at rehab. I started to feel very isolated. The final stage of grief I felt was acceptance. Eventually, I accepted the fact that I'm very susceptible to injuries, but I always knew I had the strength to come back no matter what the injury was. Now I'm back playing soccer with the school. I'm not the same player I was 4 years ago, but I enjoy every minute being out there on the field with my team and my coach. And I love every single one of them to death, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. Yes, my hips still bother me when I'm out there, and I know I'll never be 100%, but it doesn't matter to me anymore. As long as I'm able to play, I'm happy. What I want all of you guys to take from this is that no matter how hard life can get and how hard it seems, through hard work and determination, it will always get better. Just look at what I had to go through to get back on the field. If I could get through that, you all can get through absolutely anything. Thank you.